The hypocrisy is palpable when you listen to Barack Obama talking about the necessity for the world to unite in the fight against the Islamic State and against international terrorism, because, of course, the United States is one of the leading exponents of terrorism around the world, not only terrorism with its military, but, in fact, covert intelligence ties to the actual terrorist organizations themselves, as well as looking the other way as large-scale terror organizations emerge, both of which there's a sort of a gray line, a very fine line between those two. For instance, we can think back to the 2012 Defense Intelligence Agency memo, which basically lays it quite openly that the United States was perfectly aware of the development of the Islamic State in Syria and wanted to use it as a weapon against the Assad government in order to bring regime change to Syria. But of course, it's not only that. We have even quite recently documented evidence linking the United States and its allies to the Islamic State, not just to terrorist organizations, so-called moderates inside of Syria, but the actual Islamic State, Daesh itself. For instance, mainstream media in Canada reporting on ties between Canadian officials at their embassy in Jordan and recruiters for the Islamic State. Now, what do you think was happening there? Why was Canada, a staunch ally of the United States and of NATO, why was Canada hosting ISIS recruiters at its embassy in Jordan? What was the purpose of such meetings? What is the purpose of the connections between the U.S. intelligence establishment and al-Qaeda affiliates in Libya, such as the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group in 2011, in Syria between the al-Nusra Front and the al-Sham organization, and all of the others that are proxies of Saudi Arabia and ultimately of the United States and its allies? How about the close ally in Turkey, the NATO member Turkey, which is funding the Islamic State still to this day, despite it being internationally recognized as basically the funder, the bankroller behind the Islamic State through illicit oil dealings and other machinations? We could point to literally hundreds of other examples of the United States either fomenting terrorism, funding terrorism, or using its proxies to do those things. So when Obama stands there and talks about the need to unite against terrorism, one has to ask the question, what exactly he means, and is he really serious? Of course, the answer is no. It is a resounding no, because terrorism is one of the most potent weapons that the United States has in its arsenal to achieve political ends. This is true in the Middle East. This is true all over the world. We can think back to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the late 1970s and 1980s, a very powerful weapon against the Soviet Union at that time. We can think back to the 1990s, the so-called Kosovo Liberation Army, an al-Qaeda network funded and operated by the United States in order to achieve political objectives in the Balkans. We can look at Libya, Syria, many other examples. Of course, Iraq, of course, the Mujahideen against Iran, many examples of the United States funding and supporting and oftentimes organizing and mobilizing and directly coordinating terrorism. So excuse me if I laugh at Obama's statements, because the reality is Obama, just like every president before him, just like whoever will succeed him, is one of the principal CEOs behind Terror Inc.